Podcast.
Hi everyone, this is Nicholas Lee from Malaysia.
And I'm Jesse Driver from Bali.
I'm Gaddafi from sunny Singapore.
And I'm Paige Neal from Singapore as well. And welcome to the first ever inaugural Newbie Dice podcast. Woo!
What's up, man?
Okay, this is our first time doing it. I'm not sure how the tech and everything is going to work out, but we're just going to do it anyway. And it might be totally crappy, but we'll just roll with the punches. And today, the first topic that I would like to talk about in this inaugural podcast is the global Kings of War community, how tight-knit the global Kings of War community is. But before we do that, let's have a round of introductions of each of the players, where we're from, and our gamer origin story. Now, you might have seen or heard three of us, God, Nicholas, and myself, on one of the Countercharge episodes, Countercharge Far East. I'm not sure which episode number that is, but we're back here again, showcasing you the Asian side of Kings of War. So without further ado, let's start with Nicholas. Tell us your gamer origin story.
Thank you, Paige. I started gaming, in the early 2000s. Started with Warhammer Fantasy. It was actually 40K that piqued my interest at first, but I realized that my true love is actually rank and file warfare. So started with Warhammer around 6th edition, I think. I got a couple of armies since then. I also do play other gaming systems, from small scale skirmish level games like Kill Team and Dead Zone to naval gamings like dystopian wars and space battle games as well. So, but my true love has always been the fantasy genre, and I find myself coming back to Kings of War more often than not after this hiatus. So that's it.
Have you picked up Kings of War Armada, since you talked about dystopian wars, right? It's a naval game, right?
Yep, not yet though. With the lockdown in effect, it's kind of hard to get new models at the moment.
Right. How is the access to tabletop gaming and perhaps starting from Games Workshop products in Malaysia? And specifically, you're from Penang, right?
Yes, sir, that's right. So it is fairly accessible. We have quite a fair number of gaming shops in Penang. And ordering from KL, where the bulk majority of the industry is in, is not a problem at all. And of course, you have all the secondary markets, with all the players on. So getting new products, getting new systems in play, I don't feel it's a problem. It's just whether or not you have the time and the meta group to play with it.
Yeah. Guys, feel free to chime in if you have anything to share. But I have a few more questions for Nicholas. I'm just quite curious. How big is Penang? What's the population size in Penang?
At the end of last year, it is 1.7 million.
It's just an island that's part of Malaysia. And for those who are not sure where we are all from, I think I'll add Google Maps splashed onto the screen as we're talking about this. And how big is the island? How long does it take from you to drive from one end to the other?
Penang size is just over 1,000 km square. You can drive around the island in a single day. Most of the population, and more of the urban development is centered around the center as well as eastern part of it. That's where we link up together with the peninsula itself. Penang actually covers, a little bit more than just an island. There's a little stretch of land, on the peninsula that counts as, part of our state. Now, the western part of the island is more agricultural and contains, all the orchards and fruit plantations and so on.
Do you play computer games?
Yes, I do. Frequently, in fact.
What are your main games?
Well, Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition. I tend to play a lot of real-time strategy games. I enjoy playing StarCraft 2 with my son.
Wow.
And Steam games like Total War, Warhammer, Vermintide, some action games.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Nick. So we'll move to the next one. God, introduce yourselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Gaddafi, or Mod Gaddafi, as some people know me from Facebook. I started wargaming with Warhammer back when I was like 7, 8 years old. I had a friend, Alex, who actually employed me to actually help him paint his Warhammer skeletons, because you can't mess up skeletons. So that was like back in 95 or so. So that's my first exposure to wargaming and miniatures. But we didn't really play, we just used them as toy soldiers, in fact. After that, it was only in the early 2010, we noticed that, me and Alex, we noticed that there was a Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition group that was quite active. So we joined them, and we were actually aspiring to join them for ETC. For those people who might not know, ETC is a Warhammer team tournament held in Europe every year. At its peak, there was like 40 to 50 countries. So Singapore actually sent a team every single year. Me and Paige, and Alex, we were all part of the Young Bloods group, like all the rookies that we were like training and aspiring to actually get to ETC. But we all know what happened. End times happened. So when end times happened, the group kind of splintered. Me and a few others, we picked up Kings of War. We really enjoyed it. We actually enjoyed it more than Warhammer Fantasy. From then on, me and Paige, we were the local ambassadors. We didn't really have local gaming stores supporting the game from the start, but sometime last year, Alex actually took over a game store. And we are best friends, so I forced him to carry more Kings of War. And he also plays the game, so it makes it a lot easier. So then from then on, we're playing mostly Kings of War and venturing more into the Mantic universe. Earlier this year, I joined a bunch of people playing Dead Zone. Initially, it was only 3 to 4 people, but the group just exploded, and we even had a 12-player campaign. Yeah, for anyone who hasn't tried Dead Zone, it's pretty fun. Even though I'm not a fan of sci-fi, the gameplay is so smooth and fast, and it's just really fun. And
Let's quickly talk about how Dead Zone started in our country. It started with God and I say, hey, let's buy a Dead Zone starter, try it out, and maybe we can try to push it to the sci-fi gamers and convert them to Mantic, right?
Yeah.
So when we asked Alex to bring in the Dead Zone starter, then he said, oh, okay, I think he might as well. He started to list the Dead Zone products on his store, the web store. And what happened next, God?
Yeah, what happened next was we actually created a group. Then we realized that there were a few people who had Dead Zone Kickstarters from like first ad, second ad. So they decided to come down and play. Then I joined them, and slowly it just grew organically. They were just bringing their friends. People was watching our games. They got interested, and it just grew and grew. And unfortunately, Paige was not able to join us, even though it was me and him.
Yeah, I just had a kid at that time, so it was very hard to go out for gaming.
Yeah, so it just grew. Every week we had a new player. It was so easy to pick up, so fun, so fast. So it's then having the web store really helps, because even though there are people with models from the Kickstarter, the web store of Hammer House, our local gaming store, actually brought in like command dice, starter sets, and stuff that you need to play Dead Zone. And we also had a few players who brought their entire terrain collections and left it at the store. So that really helped.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get my first Dead Zone game next this coming Tuesday evening. I have my force all painted up during the lockdown. And yeah, the community just started without us. We just wanted to buy Dead Zone. It was on the website, and people started appearing. Hey, I have Dead Zone, and the community just exploded from there. So great. That's a great story. Great what's happening to our local scene right now. But let's move on to Jesse. Do introduce yourself.
Jesse Driver from the United States. I've been living in Bali for about 6 years now. I started in Warhammer Fantasy 6th edition while I was in college. And I guess I played the end of 6th, all of 7th, and then a little bit of 8th. But I actually quit playing Warhammer prior to the end times. And I avoided all of the emotional baggage that went with that. So I quit Warhammer because I went international teaching. And so I had about a 10-year, I don't know how long it was almost a decade of almost no wargaming at all. I did experiment with a little bit of War Machine in there in the summers, War Machine Hordes, but really it was all just kind of boxed away in a closet. Well, the guy who got me involved in Warhammer in college eventually said, Driver, have you ever heard of Mantic and Dead Zone? I said, no. And he goes, I think you should check this out. And he had kickstarted Dead Zone, but he has a huge family as well. So he never really got around to putting the Kickstarter together. And eventually I bought his Kickstarter off of him. And I brought it in a suitcase back to Bali. And I started this Dead Zone after school activity. And that expanded, it went crazy. I had to get more models. I ended up buying another Dead abandoned Kickstarter from somebody on the internet. And the kids just loved it. And we had a huge tournament. I think I've tied the record for largest Dead Zone tournament ever, which is 28 competitors, which was at Green School.
Wow.
And
in Bali.
yeah, and then it's also out of basically my personal collection, right? So I'm making terrain and stuff. And I actually made an art class. So the kids are helping me make terrain, painting models. And something dangerous happened. And I knew it was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen because the kids started to get excited on Dead Zone and Mantic. They started going on the website. And I had kind of explored a little, I kind of knew it was out there. But then one day a kid asked me, Mr. Driver, what is Kings of War? And I went, well, I haven't played it, but it looks like a fantasy battle game. And I had I had all of these armies back in the United States in a closet. Basically brought them all back. One after a summer visit, we started to play Kings of War in the after school activity, and I made an art class called Make Play. And so we had kids that had no gaming experience that just are drawn to the models. And I teach middle school and high school, and so that's the little community that I have in Bali is mostly my students. However, some of my teacher friends have gotten involved as well. And so I do get to play, I play a lot of 12-year-olds, but I also get to play some adults every now and then too. And I guess it was through Kings of War fanatics that I just kind of recognized this guy named Gaddafi on there, and I kind of liked what he was saying most of the time. And eventually I just reached out to him to ask him his opinion on something about Kings of War. And from there, we started a friendship that has been really valuable to me. And I came to Singapore for the Kings of War tournament. That was the last thing that happened before the pandemic hit.
Right before COVID, January 2020.
January 18th of 2020. And so
Yes,
it's really nice that I got to share that last week with you guys.
You said middle school and high school, right? So aren't there students older than 12?
There's a few students, yeah, there's like 14 and stuff like that. Yeah, as they get older, they kind of get other interests, but the middle school it's where it really took off.
You teach at that international school, right?
Yeah, it's called the Green School. It's out in the jungle. It's very beautiful. It's made out of bamboo. A huge amount of people from all over the world come there. And so I guess I'll talk about that Dead Zone tournament just a little bit because I was super proud of that for a few reasons. It did have the most participants at the time, but it also, and this is true of wargaming, it had students from primary. There was a 5th grader. It had students from primary, middle school, high school, teachers, and parents all competing at the same level. And I just think that's really cool. I don't know of any other thing any other activity where you can actually have a fair game between that broad of a group of participants. And so that was super cool. And in addition to that, I don't remember what it was, but there was probably something like 12 or 15 different nationalities represented at that tournament.
Wow.
Just because of the international nature of my school. It is internationally, I can tell you that miniature war games and Mantic in particular is fantastic because the learning curve is really easy to accomplish. Dead Zone and Kings of War have been terrific learning, whatever you call it, learning opportunities for my students. A lot of engagement here.
Jesse, so you are now in Bali, and that's in Indonesia. For the people who don't know, that's a tropical beach holiday destination in Asia, and
Yeah.
Paradise, basically. It's paradise.
paradise. And I think all Australians and New Zealanders would know about that place because that's one of the hot destinations for them, holiday destinations from them, because it's relatively near to them.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, I'll put it on the map. And maybe some of our American audience, assuming that there are, would be interested to know which part of US are you originally from?
I'm from Iowa, which is in the Midwest in the center of the United States, from a small town of like 150 people. And
Wow.
so, yeah, I found my way out of there, and a long, long journey to get to Bali from there. You can't even, there's no airport even close to where I'm from and all that. So,
And you used to play Warhammer there? There's a scene there?
well, the Warhammer scene that I got involved with, I had to travel for. And we went every year. I had a small group of friends, but we would kind of our hangout, our big once a year vacation was to go to a tournament, a Warhammer tournament called the Hillbilly. And we had to drive for like 8 or 10 hours. I don't know how long it was to get there,
Wow.
but it was quite a long drive. Now, Nick, don't you guys did a big drive, didn't you? Did Nick come to you guys, or did you guys go to Nick? I don't remember which
There
way.
It
was
came to
a
us.
God. Are you still on screen? I don't see you on screen right
Yeah,
now.
my camera died, but yeah, basically me and a friend, we actually drove up about 8 to 10 hours to Penang from Singapore. And another two of us, Alex, who I mentioned earlier, and James, they actually took a flight to Penang. That's about an hour or so. But midway through the flight, there was a lot of turbulence. And they actually had to land in Kuala Lumpur, which is the capital of Malaysia. So that's like in the halfway between Singapore and Penang. So it wasn't an easy journey for the both of us, for both groups. So we went there for a little friendly island versus island competition called the Islander. It was a 4-on-4 team tournament. So that was very, very fun. So Nick, maybe you want to share a bit more about that?
So that was one of my most memorable events with our local community. Yeah, it was great fun meeting new people, and especially from our neighbors to the south. We had a 4v4 team tournament, as Gat mentioned. So players accumulate points for their team, and then at the end of the day, we see who will emerge the champion. A wide variety of different armies were used, and from our end, we were so excited that we had guests incoming that we were rushing to prepare all the tables, make all the nice terrain, clean up the place. So
It
make
was
it
held in a clubhouse, right? It was in the clubhouse.
yeah, we had we have a sort of small independent clubhouse, that is it's more of a personal club, for all members to come in and play whatever games they want to play. So upkeep of the club, we maintain it ourselves, and it's a responsibility for everyone to sort of enjoy the facilities there, and play whatever games you want whenever you want.
I missed that one. I'm still finding it difficult to escape for a weekend to go gaming. Family would kill me, so I'm still working that out. So let's see how it goes in the future.
Yeah, one day I would like to play with you, Paige. Let's hope,
Yes,
let's hope.
when this lockdown is finally over. So Singapore
Yeah.
and Malaysia, in fact, from Singapore to drive to the borders of Malaysia, and that would be the state of Johor, it's about an hour or an hour and a half drive. So it's pretty close. But all the way to KL is, I think, 5 hours, and Penang is further up from there, about 8 hours, according to Gut. There's something about road trips. I think I would enjoy road trips, and 8 hours, I guess, to the Americans is a short journey compared to some of the trips they've taken. But I think it can be quite fun, right? You guys can take turns to drive, and we will be chatting about Kings of War throughout and gaming
Yeah.
in general.
What we did, we would play Dungeons and Dragons on the way down in the car, and
Wow.
Serious?
it made the journey just go by like that. And on the way back, then you talk about tournament strategy and your list, and again, the drive just goes by like that. So if you got the right crew, those gamer war trips are pretty awesome.
That is a fantastic idea, playing D&D while on the road.
Like, we stole one of my mom's kitchen pots to roll the dice in. That's really all we did. So that was it.
I thought you would use some digital dice instead.
Well, this was pre-digital dice era.
Right. Is this Hillbilly tournament still around?
No, not that I'm aware of. The Hillbilly tournament ended up, I think it became officially sponsored by GW at one time, and it kind of changed in its tone. And I don't know if it survived into Age of Sigmar era. I have no idea what happened to it. The guys, a lot of the guys that were part of that are part of a Facebook group called Old Hammer that I'm
Right.
in, and so I do stay in touch with some of those people that I met there, but I don't know if the actual tournament scene. I don't think any of those guys play it anymore.
Oh well, maybe we can convert them to Kings of War as well.
Yeah, and they do, and there is a lot of interest, and people have created Kings of War armies out of their old ones, and I've enjoyed doing that, but I enjoy buying Mantic armies as well. I've got a bunch of, I'm in my little hobby cave here, and I'm surrounded by little plastic figures. I've been to Gad's, more like a hospital. It's like so clean. I don't know how this room so could eat off the floor in that room. Crazy.
Well, I can
Yeah.
see from your background, it looks like a nice tropical hut. So looks amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
it,
in it's kind of a tropical cabin here.
it is amazing. I actually can share a little story with everyone that will make everyone envious.
You
Okay,
guys
so
want to hear this?
okay, so basically for my proposal trip, I actually got me and my wife to travel to Bali. You know, it sounds romantic, but one of my ulterior motives was to meet Jesse and get a game in at his place.
Yeah.
So
So he came to propose to his wife in paradise and also play some Kings of War with me.
yeah, Paige can actually share the photo. So basically, what I did is I proposed first. So I proposed first before
That would be the
bringing.
right order of
Yes,
things. Yes.
that would be
Yes.
the correct priority.
Yeah. So it was very fun. Jesse was a very gracious host, and he brought us around to places that a typical tourist would not be able to see in Bali. He brought us to like a night market where we are the only foreigners there, and it was really fun. And I got to play King's War in his backyard. I mean, I would never have imagined myself playing Kings of War in Bali in someone's backyard. So it was great fun. And did I win, Jesse? I forgot.
I think you did win, and my favorite part is when we drove your fiance to the hotel, dropped her off, and then drove back to my place to play.
To play more. Yes.
Oh my goodness.
So
That
what
would never fly in my relationship.
yeah,
No.
so what I did is I actually proposed to her by actually climbing up the mountain, the volcanic mountain Mount Batur, the day before. So we climbed up the mountain. I proposed to her on top of the mountain. We got down the mountain, then we went to Jesse's place the next day. But she was so tired that all she wanted to do was sleep. So she was fine with that. She was fine
It
with
worked. It worked out very well for everyone. It was great.
yes,
Fantastic planning, gut.
yes.
I guess I would also just like to invite anybody in the audience, if you ever want to come to Bali and send your wife or partner to a massage place and then come to my house for some Kings of War, you're quite welcome to do so. So just look me up on Kings of War Fanatics if you're coming to Bali in the future.
I think quite a lot of Asians and Australians might take you up on that offer, Jesse.
Great.
Awesome. So how's the access to tabletop gaming in Bali like, Jesse?
My little, I just kind of created this bubble at my school, but actually in the last year, Warhammer 40K has taken off, and the first Warhammer store in Bali has opened about 2 weeks ago, and the group plays every weekend. And I did sneak one of the guys out of the group and play Kings of War once, which was nice, and he got to experience what a movement phase feels like and what it means to do a real movement phase. That was cool. And so there is interest here, and it's fantastic to see the community growing. And actually, as the school has been on distance learning and stuff, it's been difficult for the school thing to continue, but we don't have any firm lockdowns. And so I have been able to engage with this Warhammer 40K group a little bit. It's been mixes of frustrating and fun, but mostly fun.
As long as you don't take it too seriously, I think you'll enjoy yourself.
Yeah, that's my problem, because I kind of want to play that competitive level. I have the most fun when I'm just kind of bringing a small force and playing a bunch of games. I kind of miss that turn. I was kind of born into the tournament setting. That's what my friends did, right? And so I do
Right.
miss that gearing up for a tournament mode.
Right. Thank you, Jesse and Gad. So now about myself, I have a big brother that's like 9 years older than me. So he introduced me to gaming quite early. I used to play his computer games. He started playing Magic, and so I went. He taught me how to play Magic when I was pretty young. For those Magic players, I played the Urza block and the Odyssey block. When I went to one of the local Magic stores, they were selling some tabletop games, figurines, and there's a table for playing as well. Being so young, I was like, I don't have money to play that. And I don't know what game it was. I think looking back, I think it could be the old Confrontation. 2012 came along, I graduated from college, I started working, and I walked by a game store that's, of course, predominantly GW, right? So I'm more of a fantasy guy. So although they said, we play more 40K here, but I say, no, I like fantasy. I'm going to buy fantasy. And that's how I started. I got my first box of Lizard Men, start collecting Lizard Men, or what was the box called back in the day?
Battalions, Battle Force, something like that.
Yeah, the smaller box. I actually wanted to dive into Skaven, and the shopkeeper warned me that you gotta paint a lot of rats if you want to play. And I was like, okay, let me look at something else. I just like the look of the Lizard Men. I think I like humanoid models because I find them very creative. So I like Skaven for the ninja rats and the Screaming Bell. I think the Screaming Bell is still one of my favorite models of all time. But I went to Lizard Men. I met Gut from there. We are part of the what we call the Young Bloods, right? So we are a group of new players that spawned from that local game store. I think there was a Young Blood tournament of 8 players.
Yes, there was. I think it was 1,500 points, a small tournament.
I forgot how I did there, or I can't really remember if I played. I was there. I might be a spectator. I played a year of Lizard Men, and we were primarily trained by the veterans who are ETC players. So ETCs, they have their own set of house rules. They call them comp rules, where basically they ban some overpowered stuff, or they kind of nerf some overpowered stuff, or they prevent you from taking too many overpowered stuff. Whatever it is, right? So there are specific rules, and that spawns a very specific and very streamlined style of play. And if you play a certain army, that's the strategy you have to go. So I was playing Lizard Men, and the Lizard Men is basically they defend and try not to lose too much. That's their main role if you are a Lizard Man player. So I was like, I don't want to be locked into a specific role just because I choose this race, and I started to explore other games. After a year of 8th edition, I went to Warmer Hordes. At that time, it was like the premier competitive tabletop game. At the time, that was the only good competitive tabletop game. So I went to play that. I left the 8th edition scene quite early. Played about 2.5 years of that quite competitively, and then End Times came along, right? And whereas God went to Kings of War, I was already in Warmer Hordes, and unfortunately, I did pull quite a few of the players to Warmer Hordes. Then Warmer Hordes went into 3rd edition, which at that point I was starting to feel a little bit burned out. The problem with Warmer Hordes is it's a very big gotcha game. You gotta remember what everything does. There might be this model that gives an extra 2-inch buff, 2-inch threat range, and that's the difference between getting charged and not getting charged at, right?
Paige, my very last game of War Machine Hordes was when the Butcher 3 did some extra movement and just murdered my dude, and I was like, all right, I'm not playing this again.
Right. And yeah, the thing about Warm Horse is also like it's if you get charged, usually it dies. That's it. So once you get charged when you're not supposed to be charged at, the game is pretty much over at that point. And you have a general on the table, they call it the Warcaster or the Warlock. When he dies, just game over straight away. So at that point, I was quite burnt out by it, and I revisited Kings of War because I heard of it when End Times came along. So I went online, read up all the rules, and I know God was pushing it. So I started to contact him, and we started to play more together. That was a time when Uncharted Empires 2nd edition was still in beta. I remember downloading the Excel file to read the Ratkin rules and play the Ratkin rules off of the Excel file. Yeah, soon after I jumped in Uncharted Empires release, I bought a Skaven Force for cheap just before I left 8th edition. And then coming back to Kings of War, I started Skaven first.
Ratkin.
Yes,
Ratkin.
Ratkin. I'm sorry, Mantic, Ratkin. Sorry, Ronnie. So Ratkin, and that was my first ever fully painted army in all of tabletop gaming. My Lizardmen were never fully painted. My War Mahots, none of my armies were ever fully painted because the meta keeps shifting. You buy new stuff, you play a few times, you have to buy another thing too. So I never fully painted my War Mahots army. It's been great. Kings of War, we've been playing for a long time. In between, I play quite a few other games. Now I'm going to try Dead Zone. I've been playing Steam Forge games, God Tier. For those of you who are wondering what Singapore is like, we are a very metropolitan country, but very small. You can drive end to end in an hour's time on the freeway, and we're quite densely packed. I think we're almost as dense as New York. Most of us stay in apartments, high-rise apartments. So if you're ever doing an Asia tour, do find us, hook up with us, and we'll get some games in. Let's move on to our main topic for today, which is the global Kings of War community. So this is a topic that I sort of chose, and for this episode, especially, I wanted a more regional cast. That's why we have Jesse here, located in Bali, and Nicholas from Malaysia. And although we are all located in different countries, and even the US and the UK players and the Europe players, I feel that I've never felt this in the other war games. Especially, even though I was quite into the scene, especially War Mahots, but Kings of War sort of feels like a big giant family, partially because of Fanatics. You know, we see each other's posts on Fanatics. What other mediums are there? Help me out here.
KOW forums, I think, for one, helps a lot. Fanatics is obviously the main one. And I'm pretty sure we all have our, WhatsApp groups that, with today's technology is able to link people, from all over the world together in a single place. Definitely you won't find things like this during the era of, say, Warseer back in the 20,000s.
Warseer, oh my god.
Yeah, back then it was just forum posts, there's no WhatsApp group, there's no podcast, like this going on, right? So all this, helps us to bond together. I discovered Kings of War by myself. There's no outside influence. And when I posted on Fanatics, Gad commented, then I was like, hey, there's someone in Singapore actually playing this. Oh my God. And that's where it all started. So all these different social media nowadays, I think, that where people are sharing pictures of their armies, you can actually put a face to the person, you can talk to them. All this helps build that close-knit feeling, that is, not present, in the early days of, my wargaming at the very least, from my point of view.
Facebook has been a great proponent of this. Fanatics, I think, being the main Kings of War group in the world, on the whole, everyone's pretty gentlemanly there, and that kinds of help. Internet, there might be trolls and very vicious people out there, but I think everyone's quite cordial on Kings of War Fanatics in general. And you can even see that people post and comment often enough that they start to crack jokes and inside joke, poke fun at each other. So that's pretty cool as well. And what about the podcasts? Do you guys listen to the podcasts regularly? We have Countercharge, Unplugged Radio, Giant Dwarf. What else? Help me out here.
What's the Australian guys? Misfire, something Direct Misfire.
Direct Misfire, yes.
Yes.
So that was actually the first podcast that I listened to when I first accepted the fact that I'm going to get back into wargaming, fantasy wargaming, after this 10-year break. And I remember I had the book, I had the second edition book, and they had a army rundown for Kingdoms of Men, which I have my old Empire stuff sitting here. And I remember just reading my book and listening to them do the army review. And I felt like I was in college studying. It was like my first real intake and learning experience of Kings of War was through Direct Misfire podcast. Their format that those guys developed, that is an awesome format. And I think some of the other groups have since adapted that. Yeah, that was really helpful for me in learning the game.
Direct Misfire podcasts, they are very structured and methodical, and each podcast can be up to hours. It took me a while before I really got into it, because at first I wasn't as interested to listen to just army breakdowns for hours on end. I started with Countercharge first. I felt that the interview style, the very casual, just talking about the community style, really fun, and it gets when you listen to enough episodes of Countercharge, you feel like you know everybody, right? Because they do have a host of guests, and of course the host as well, and the international hosts now from all over the world. No Asian representative yet. Hint, hint. Rob. So
Rob and Steve.
yeah, and it was actually Steve that first reached out to us, right? He's in UK, but he's pretty aware of the Asian scene, and he reached out to us to do this Kings of War Countercharge Far East episode. That's kind of put us on the map, really. We also play, at least I do, or some of us do play the Universal Battle games, which expose you to the international scene. That's kind of helped also. We do have the YouTube videos as well for all the battle reports. Mastercrafted being the front-running YouTube channel for the longest time. Yeah, that spurred me to start my own YouTube channel as well. I have a specific way I like to digest game content on YouTube, and I portray that in my videos. I understand it's probably not for everybody because it's quite summarized and focused on strategy and all that. I also think of how I would like to come up with a format that's pretty easy to record, that I can do it semi-consistently. There are some videos, there are some styles of battle report videos that I really like top-down camera and fast-forwarded as you narrate over the entire game. But that takes a lot of production time to produce. So I say, oh no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to take screenshots and I'm going to talk over that. Any of the YouTube channels and podcast channels you'd like to shout out that has been really helpful in your Kings of War journey?
Yeah, if I may, I can go first. Countercharge has mentioned Kings of Worldwide. I think it's been a bit dormant now, but it was pretty nice. Their episodes are a bit shorter. Unplugged Radio, and also the Beer Face podcast, and Direct Misfire, of course. For YouTube, probably Andy2D6. Yeah, so Andy2D6 is pretty fun. He's pretty wacky, and I got to meet him in person as well. We can share the story later on. Visible Riley, Hobby Sauce, 4UP Gaming, Victoria Gaming. I think more recently has a bunch of live battle reports as well. So the battle report scene for Kings of War is growing, and of course Newbie Dice, who I've had the pleasure and honor of being part of the battle report before, but on the losing end, but it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, for me,
Just-
4UP Gaming, Death by Dragons, even
Oh, yeah,
Guerilla,
Steve.
Guerilla Miniature Games also does pretty decent battle reports that I enjoy. All of these channels, and I tune in from time to time, keep the spark going, especially during this lockdown.
Guerilla Miniature Game, GMG, right? He's the king of playing tabletop games with one hand because he's always have his camera on the other hand.
Awesome, right?
Wow.
He just records and
Amazing.
plays with one hand.
So skillful, I tell you.
Yeah, and I'll shout out to some of the podcasts, or at least they have put out content before. At least in the past, we have the LakeSWATT Fantasy Squad, who's been put out a decent bunch of content last year before they went dormant as well. Beerface was mentioned before. Kings of War Worldwide mentioned before. 4-Foot Snake, the UK guys.
Yes.
When are you going to come out with another episode?
There's another. Actually, I remember the first international connection that I ever made within my new emergence of wargaming was to, oh man, it was a guy named Paul. It was about Dead Zone, and he's like, well, you need to ask Andy Sharp that question. And
Ooh, Andy
so
Sharp.
yeah, there's a guy, Andy Sharp, and he I think he is the guy kind of behind the revision of firefight rules now, but he has a podcast with some episodes called Weight of Fire. That was actually one of my first international connections, was reaching out to him to talk about running a tournament. I remember I had some questions and stuff, and because he had run a tournament called something like Attack on Canaan something. Like he kind of made up a fluff thing, and I just said, can I borrow that? And that was my very first international outreach on Facebook. But you feel comfortable with these people because you get to see their content. Like Nicholas said, you kind of see their face, you get to see pictures of them playing sometimes. I think Facebook has just made me super comfortable with the community, and when I've reached out to people, it ends up being something really positive.
Yeah, shout out, Gut said in the chat, shout out to Northern Kings YouTube, who puts up some content ad hoc, and especially to Elliot Morris, who does a lot of things for the Kings of War community. He's in the rules committee right now, even.
And also to Nick Williams. I think everyone in the Kings of War community knows Nick Williams. I unfortunately had the pleasure of seeing both him and Steve playing in short shorts during their first game at Clash of Kings in 2019. No, that's not gonna leave my brain anytime soon. So yeah, but Nick was great. Nick does this tours around the UK. I mean, he's where he's from, Yorkshire, for people coming in from overseas. So he actually brought me around York, Leeds. So that was fantastic, and it's all worked out well because I'm a Leeds United fan. For those people who are into football, so I actually managed to catch a football game over there as well when I was there in Leeds with Nick.
Soccer for the Americans.
Yeah, soccer.
Right. So I think Gad is the most internationally traveled Kings of War player among us. He's been to UK, he's been to Bali to play with Jesse. Have you been to US yet?
Not yet, but it's probably on the cards. Definitely on the cards. I actually have been talking with the lady of the lake.
Chris Kapsner?
Yeah, Chris Kapsner. Yeah. So that's probably one of my dream trips because as part of their tournament, they actually have this campfire community event kind of thing where people bring food. People actually can camp out in his backyard or something like that. I've seen pictures. It's super awesome. So that's on the bucket list, and probably I can bring my wife there and get her to do something, I guess, for during the tournament day.
That's only like a 10 or 12-hour drive from where I'm from, so I can go and visit parents too. You think they'd be upset if I just went to Lady of the Lake and didn't visit my parents?
Yeah, definitely. And I remember that Chris actually had all the wives and all the spouses of all the players actually got together to go out on their own as well. So that's a good idea we had to do. And I think me and Jesse, we have had plans to actually go to CanCon.
Yeah.
So CanCon is probably the biggest Kings of War tournament in the southern hemisphere. That's probably maybe next year, Jesse.
Yeah, if they let us in, then I'm ready. It's seeing Australia Kings of War, which I follow their groups. You got some states that are, Melbourne is locked down, and other states are having Kings of War games with no masks, and same kind of with United States now. It's kind of opening up again, so hopefully it can open up, and I can get back to Singapore, and we can go to Australia. These are I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yes. Shout out to a few other content producers out there. In terms of Mantic, and I think these are more Dead Zone or other games focused. There's Frantic Gamers, puts out content every now and then. There's a Dead Zone, the podcast. And there's actually a newish podcast called Geeky Goblin.
Oh yes, I've heard of that.
Yeah, there's Holy Diver. That's the YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, it's channel. He's pretty cool. He's not for everyone, but I just focus on the hobby aspect. He has nice armies and.
Right, and for you guys, you haven't been on this yet, but I've been on it quite often. That is the Countercharge After Dark, and that is a chat that people get on to chat and just shoot the breeze, talking nonsense while they do their hobbying. It started out as a Friday night thing in the US, and for us in Asia, it's actually Saturday morning. So I started joining that first, and then they start to have more sessions, and it kind of become an impromptu thing. It used to be on Google Meets, and now it's on Discord. So it's pretty convenient. You just open up your Discord and see if anyone's in the voice channel, if there is, or if you just happen to have time. Sometimes I'll just pop in the chat and I say I'll be coming online tonight, or rather this morning on my side, but I just tell them tonight, and then I will just be doing my hobby painting and be on the voice channel and see anybody hops on. Maybe after 15-20 minutes nobody hops on, then I'll just go offline. But on most nights right now, or most mornings for us in Asia, there will be somebody online. So I do encourage you guys to get on board after dark to just shoot the breeze and chat with the people. There's a nice community going on right there. Shout out to Felix. He is probably one of the most active ones. There's Austin, Casey, Dan, Visibly Riley, and I got a shout out to Jeremy Duval. He's not as regular as he used to be, and he always comes online, and after a few minutes of chatting, and he'll say, "I'll be back," and he never comes back, and then it sort of becomes a running joke. So meet the community on After Dark. For people in Asia, for people in US, do join us on Discord. So there's something to do, just to chat while you are doing painting. Most of the time. Sometimes I'm doing something very boring at work, and I'll just put it on and chat with them while I crunch some numbers, put numbers in Excel files and stuff like that.
One of the kids that really dove into Dead Zone the biggest, he started joining Dead Zone Discords. There's a guy, I don't even know what his name is, Andrew Jaslin. I don't know how to say his name, but everybody calls him Coach. And he has this Family of Gamers 777 channel. And they were really good about putting out Dead Zone content. They'd review the factions. They'd just talk it all over. And one of my kids just started soaking up their content. And so then he's on Discord with them. And so then Green School and Mr. Driver's Class would get shout outs on his YouTube because my kid Paul was talking to them. And I just think it's great that we get these international connections, and it's super friendly. Like you mentioned the name Jeremy Duval. I've never met that guy, but I feel warmth towards him. I'm aware that, sometimes I know what's going on in his life just from countercharge updates and stuff. And so it's a unique thing, and it's really one of the most positive uses that I can imagine for the internet is connecting with people with your same interests all around the world. You can make IRL friendships too, which is really cool.
I think Jesse mentioned this much earlier in this show, which is how Mantic Games, I think Mantic, the rule set and the support from Mantic Games have a big part to play in that. Generally being a game that's easy to play, no gotchas. When there's gotchas, sometimes when you lose due to a gotcha, you feel a little bit sour about it.
Why am I even doing this,
When I was already playing Kings of War and I went to the game store and there was my old buddies playing Warhammer Hordes, there's like this, I'm not going to name names, but there's this pretty good player. I think he was the best in Singapore at the time. And then there's a guy who's pretty good, but he has been very rusty. He hasn't played for a long time. They had a game. They rack up. Rack up alone takes like 20 minutes, right? Taking your minis out, rolling the deployments, stuff like that. So 20 minutes of setup. The seasoned player went first. So that's the top of one. The back to gaming player went bottom of one. He just pushed his stuff up, cast the buffs, the setup, the unpacking of your army forwards. And then on the top of two, the seasoned player says, "I think I can kill your general." And he proceeded to do that. And the game was over. So he came, he unpacked his army, he pushed it forwards, and he lost. And he packed his army and went home. I was like, what? Oh my God, I feel so sorry for him. I was like, oh man.
This has been I'm the guy that's just packing up the army and going home from the Bali Warhammer Club. That's why I got to get my Kings of War in. And actually my primary competitor now is from Finland. And nice. Almost I don't know if I've ever played an American at Kings of War. I'd have to think about that. Mostly not, just because being an international school. But my primary competitor, our games are so, we had a game where we didn't even get into combat until the end of turn 5. And then recently we push, and so then we're back into combat on turn 2. No gotcha moves. It's all movement phase and it's all tactics, and it is just a fantastic game set, and it's so accessible to English as a second language. A huge advantage over any other war game system because it's so achievable to get there, and then you're just playing strategy. You're not having to go back to the rule book to wonder what's going on. It's all you got it all on turn 2.
That's right, Jesse. I'd like to add on to that. Threat of Force, Chaff, Death Stars. There's no one single unit that's so overpowering that it will roll over any other unit in the whole game. Everything has exploitable weaknesses, and I think it comes to player skill more than unit stats or special rules that makes me enjoy this game so much. Used to be. Do you remember the Warriors of Chaos chosen star. Back then, it was totally unkillable and generally would have a negative player experience, for whoever is facing it. So in Kings of War, there's no such a unit. Everything can be baited away. There's exploitable weaknesses to bring it down. And even then, right, killing enemy units, killing the enemy force is not a surefire way to win the game because there are 12 different scenarios. And there are certain weaknesses. If you build your force in a specific, if you narrow down and shoehorn your force into a specific steamroller type of a build, you will lose out in certain scenarios. That's why I love this game so much. There's a bit of balancing across the board. And when they release all armies at once rather than a drip feed update, that actually reinforces the point that Kings of War is a very enjoyable game for all of us here actually.
I think the nature of the game also, there's a lot of piece trading. I kill one, you kill one. You can't kill more than one unit per combat. There is this piece trading element, and most of the games, it will last until like at least turn 4 before the game is decided. It's not like losing after I moved up at the bottom of 1. That's not going to happen. Even if you're on the losing end, there's still going to be back and forth. The worst game, and I'm sad to say this, but this is a worst game I gave to an opponent because I was quite new to Kings of War at the time. I didn't know everybody. I played a guy I never played before. I don't know how good he is at the game, so I just brought my best game. But I played he just moved most of his things into my threat range and I just charged them and they just all got picked off one by one. But even that game it lasted at least till turn 4 before he decided, I'm out of units. That's the end of the game for me. There's still piece trading. There's still dice to be rolled. Yeah, the rules set, I think, has big part to play in having such a mature community of gamers where everyone's pretty friendly and cordial. When you're not sad about losing to gotchas, when you're not trying to build the most killer Death Star, exploit the rules. I think that sort of breeds a friendlier community as well. What do you guys think about that?
I fully agree.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've had students say, like, why don't we play Warhammer at school or Warhammer 40K at school? Because they find out about it. There's Black Library stuff that they find out about. There's so much content out there. I try to talk them out of it because I don't want to like breed more power gamers into the world. Like I don't want to be a nest for that kind of gaming behavior. And what's funny is I remember the kid that was telling me that. He's like, oh, these Iron Fists are just awesome. And this is I think this must have been in 8th edition when the Yellow Space Marines were the hardest ones to hit. And now that's been so far. I mean, how many factions have taken that top spot since then in that game? And so you're always playing catch up to that new release. And like Nicholas said, when you release it once a year, it's just all about your skill. It's not about meta chasing. I definitely do not want to get kids trained into that environment. I want them just to play.
No power creep, please. I would admit that Kings of War is not fully balanced. Looking at you, Undead and Abyssal Dwarfs and Night Stalkers. That's my personal opinion, but even then, even then, I think the community, the rules committee, they're doing a good job tweaking things slowly, not at a very harsh rate, because that will attract a lot of dissatisfaction from gamers, right? But just tweaking it slowly, and I trust in them to bring the game to a good state every year.
Yeah, I really liked that Clash of Kings update when you got formations. That was a really cool update, and that kind of changed our little meta at school. And now the EOD kid is like, oh wow, Mummy's Revenge, and he always brought Mummy's Revenge. The new stuff I haven't really got into yet, different planes of magic or whatever it's called, but I think it's just a fantastic idea. So it is spicy. The one thing I play with is the little deck of cards, the Kings of War battle deck, which is like some special items, like give somebody a free item, free re-rolls. And when me and my Finnish friend play, that deck comes into play all the time.
Wow.
And it's it's not tournament friendly. Yeah, that's the deck right there, Battlefield cards. Those are hilarious. And anybody that's in for a more friendly, fun, narrative flavor game, you can draw for like weather conditions at the beginning. And that's an awesome set. And I've gotten my value out of that many times over.
The set of cards that gives you small little power-ups are great. The battlefield objectives are great because it's asymmetrical, right? And then you have I think your objectives are hidden until a certain point of time. So that's pretty fun. I've not played that card. I bought the cards. I haven't really gotten a game in, but I read the weather conditions. That's a little bit more on the crazy side. So if I were ever to play it in a more balanced format, I think I will not play the weather conditions because some of them are like shooting is pretty shitty in this game, in this specific game. And if you brought a shooting army, well, tough luck. Sucks to be you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the battlefield objectives are really fun. Actually, I think if that kind of objectives were the main way to play Kings of War, I wouldn't complain. I think they're pretty awesome. Little power-ups can be a slight gotcha, but I think all of them are not very overpowered in nature. So I would recommend that deck as well. Although it was created for 2nd edition, but 3rd edition I think is still playable.
Yeah, there's only one card. You have to remove a yellow-bellied card. But yeah, when you're in the mood for non-balanced, that's where you can get a gotcha. There's a card that allows you to, if you advance and come in, so you charge, wipe out somebody, advance, come into contact, boom, play the card and do another round of combat.
Oh, wow.
That's a fun one to drop on somebody. But both of you have to be in the right mood for that, and then it's really fun.
I think Nick Williams designed those cards. Shout out
This one,
to him.
Jesse? Unstoppable. Even has a cool name.
That's the one. Yeah.
Unstoppable.
Also, the nerve check modifiers are really, really powerful too, because
yes,
if somebody breaks you, you can unbreak yourself, and it's actually pleasurable to bring that little bit of gotcha in when you want it.
So if you're in the mood for that, and even Hellpiece Rift does bring a little bit of that. The recent campaign supplement. We ran a campaign, God and I, for our local scene using the Hellpiece Rift supplement, and we added some level up mechanics for a character and a unit. Some of them gotten pretty powerful by the end of the campaign, but guess what? No matter how strong you are, you can only kill one unit in a turn, right?
Yep.
And no matter how strong you are, you die to a flank charge. That's just the nature of this game. Even if you have this super powerful whatever Death Star unit, a flank charge from a hammer, 18 attacks, crushing 2 is doubled, is just gonna wipe you out anyway. So that's the beauty of Kings of War and how the balance really helped in creating this very wonderful community. And I hope that Kings of War is here to stay for a very, very long time, because I won't be leaving this game anytime soon. And what about the hobby aspect of it? Wow. Remember, my first fully painted army is Kings of War, because I was so excited to get it painted up and get our dioramas out. So this last part of the podcast, we're gonna showcase all our armies, and we're gonna do share screen functions. Okay, to set it up in a way that doesn't disappoint. God, why don't you go first?
Yes, you always start with the worst.
That is your fully painted Dwarf army that you brought to Clash of Kings UK in 2019?
Yeah, this was actually the Dwarf army that I brought to Penang. So Penang was in August of 2019. So I spent like a few sleepless nights painting the whole army. As you can see, it's mostly Mantic. I have some Avatars of War, Pathfinders, Rangers, but mostly Mantic. And yeah, I brought pretty much the same army to Clash of Kings UK. So this is my only fully painted army. I attempted to finish a Trident Realm army for the campaign, but it's still missing bits and pieces here and there. So I am a procrastinator to the extreme. I can't stick to one army. I have painted some Night Stalkers. I have some Sylvankin. I have some. Now I'm working on Salamanders. So it's all over the place. So I'm known as, even locally, for not having fully painted armies, and that's kind of sad. But
being our Pathfinder, but God is famous for having hobby ADD. He has every single army half assembled and half painted pretty much every single army in Kings of War. That's how much he loved the game, but he just can't keep his focus to complete painting one army. The only one he got was for Clash of Kings.
Yeah, so I hope there'll be more international tournaments coming up so that will definitely motivate me, because you don't want to travel like 10,000 miles to somewhere and have a half
Put
painted
grey
army.
plastic on the table.
Yeah, so even for the Clash of Kings, I was actually doing up last minute additions in the hotel rooms in the days leading up to Clash of Kings. I brought a few paints, so when I had time and it was late, I was painting up my army days before Clash of Kings. I think it's something that a lot of players in the US or Australia, they also do. They have a tournament coming up this weekend and they just rush and they try to paint as much as they can before. So yeah, so hobby side, I'm really into diorama. I mean, locally, it's just me and Paige is a TO, so we don't really enforce MMC or PMC. To us, the rule of cool triumphs all. Yeah, I'm working on that. So hopefully I'll have more stuff to share probably the next time we have a podcast.
I mean, and we don't mind like if you are not don't have painted stuff or some of your units are proxy, right? We're just trying to get players into the game, and some of the ex Warhammer Fantasy players that we've are slowly roping back into the game. They're used to using proxies because they are always playtesting new army ideas. Just bring a blank base or put one model on it, whatever it is. We'll lend you some of our models to represent, large infantry, whatever it is. Let's just get a game in. And even that is not too confusing because on the table, there's only like 10 to 15 units, right? Kings of War is not a massive war game. It is a skirmish game. Come on, there's only 10 to 15 pieces to move around in any given game. Yeah, it's an illusion, right?
Yes, all the possibilities, Paige.
Any
all the
other
possibilities.
things you would like to showcase, God? Any models that you're really very proud of? Come on, let's put it on screen.
Not really. I mean, most recently I've painted some fire elementals. Yeah, as you can see here. My most recent, where I'm most proud of this. It's a Mantic fire elemental. So yeah, something full Mantic and yeah, mostly contrast
Awesome.
paints. Yeah, so this is part of my Salamander and Force of Nature army. There's so much overlap in the armies that just encourage you to build more and more armies. It never ends.
Yes, it does, right? So I will go next. So I share all my completed armies on Facebook and Kings of War forum or KOW forum. We kind of always like to abbreviate KOW and we just call it KOW, right? Which actually sounds terrible. The KOW. Let's try to do what the Australians do and call it Kings.
Paige, it's better than Clash of Kings. Don't abbreviate that one, okay?
Well, at least that one is funny. That one is funny, but this one is just KOW. Yeah, so let's try to call it Kings. Let's start this movement. Follow the Australians. We just call it Kings. It's kind of nice to call it Kings. Yeah, if you go to Fanatics, right, when you upload pictures ad hoc on the discussion feed, it doesn't get archived very well. So I do recommend people to go to More Media, click on albums, and you just create an album and you can store your army there. So you can see I have my 1, 2, 3. I think my Ratkin is somewhere far below, but I think I'll just showcase from KOW forum, Kings forum. I also post my completed pictures there. So Ratkin, my first completed army, and this is my first ever diorama. I'm really proud of it. Probably still one of my best dioramas to date. It's Ratkin Skaven pouring out from a mine. There's a tree as well, and I keep getting teased for having a movable tree as my unit. But yeah, I really love this. It really looks pretty dynamic. These are all mainly Skaven. This is the front view. I really like how it looks from the front view. My what do you call this? The shock troops. I decided to try something different, and I put them. I wanted to put them at the docks, but they look like they're lost at sea. So that's didn't turn out as well as I hoped. Screaming Bell. So these pictures are a little bit more haphazard. What do you call this? The Jezels or the claw shots in Mantic. This was my first demon spawn. I wanted like black tendrils, sort of like Diablos, as what was the angel called? Ezreal?
Tyrael?
Tyrael, yes.
Yeah.
But instead I wanted it black. They're made of cables actually. More diorama. Some fancy standout ones would be near the bottom actually. I have the Vermin Lord, the Forge World Vermin Lord, this guy. And with McFarlane Dragon Wings. I just sort of bought one second hand for cheap. It happens to be red and black, so I painted the Demon Spawn red color to match the wings that I got off the McFarlane Dragon. I plucked it off the dragon and planted it on this Demon Spawn. This is my proudest yet. This is a Tangle that I sort of chopped up a Screaming Bell to make it smaller and shorter because it's only supposed to be height 3. So it's a chopped up Screaming Bell with just the bare essentials. And if you notice the bell, it's actually, I bought a separate bell that's about the same size as the Screaming Bell. I chopped it off and I applied it. So if you imagine the Screaming Bell in your head, it usually goes with a very ominous deep gong, right? But when I ring it, it sounds like an ice cream bell. Ling, 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 ling.
Hilarious.
Right. This is Brood Mothers. They are convergence from Warmer Hordes. Yeah. So I finished this Ratkin. I added new units for the campaign, but the reason why I don't play this Ratkin as often because I felt that because it was my first project, the basing, the scheme, the theme wasn't very consistent, and it's a very thematic reason why I don't like to play my Ratkin army as often. Right after that, I moved on to Basilea. And fun fact, when Jeremy Duval mentioned he wanted to start Basilea on Countercharge many years back, I think it was at least 3 or 4 years back, I also started at the same time. And he's still finishing his last Spearman Horde while I finished this army a few years ago. So it's quite hilarious. I kind of tease him about it quite often. I wanted it to be fully Mantic at first, and then the models were horrible to put together. The Elo High, the cavalry that I sort of gave up, and I bought Raging Heroes, which were actually worse to put together. I actually commissioned people to put it together. I don't know about now, but at the time when I bought it, the resin was super fragile. It came with lots of flash, a lot of cleanup to be done, and the models were smaller than GW and Mantic. So if this picture, these lady cavalry, their horses are like ponies compared to the Mantic cavalry. After that, I decided to revisit the project of making it fully Mantic, and then I started to do units in Mantic. And I like to be creative. I like to do convergence. My paintings is not fantastic, but I like my convergence. This is a sister that's holding lightning in her hand. I use it as a wizard, lightning bolt wizard. Abyss on Panther. Ogre Palace Guard. I have some of them, and then I use the normal Mantic ogres, and I green stuff pink cloaks on them, so they don't look too bad. They look kind of royal still. This is my favorite unit of the whole lot because I think this middle guy's pose is super dynamic. Mantic Elo High, and that's the army put together. I am revisiting it now currently. I wanted to update, have another Ogre Palace Guard. I want to have the sister, the shooty sisters, the sister scouts. And what else? Girl Panthers. I haven't had Girl Panthers in there.
Yeah, so Paige is the only display board ranker we have in Singapore
Yeah.
for now. So yeah, shout out to Nick and his display board. So, but his display board is awesome. It fits nicely in his
my display shelf.
Display shelf, and also fits nicely in our locker. So what we actually have, because most Singaporeans don't drive, so it's a bit troublesome to actually bring our armies to the game store. So what we do is actually our game store actually has lockers where we actually can just plonk our army there, so we don't have to bring it up and down, taking the bus, taking the train, walking home, So it's makes it a lot easier to get games in.
Yeah, so I bought a photo frame. So they has this nice gold trimmings, right? And then this wall is made out of coaster. You know those coasters that are meant for pots. So they are like wooden beads, and then I cut it out to make the brick wall. And then this gate is actually made out of paper. It's from a fancy wedding invitation card that a friend sent. So I reinforced it with super glue, and I just used it as a
That looks
fancy
really
little
nice,
gate.
Paige. I really
Yeah.
like the design of those gates. Very fitting.
Yeah, it's just a wedding card actually. So yeah, I have let me bring to my next army. So there's there's some overlaps mainly in the cavalry and the foot infantry. So I'm using the Palace Foot Guard as a man at arms in my Order of the Green Lady army. So this is my Order of the Green Lady army. Also fully Mantic, and I have to be very creative with the model choices. So I'm pretty proud of this army. This is my painting is still not fantastic, but this is my most beautifully themed army to date. I have water elementals. I didn't like the Mantic water elementals, so I made it out of the water horses. You know, inspired by Lord of the Rings and Nick Williams, who did this trick first. But I used Mantic horses, and then I added water effects all over it.
Yeah, it's a great choice, Paige. I have the Mantic water mantles, and they are as heavy as your whole army, probably.
Oh, they are made of metal?
Yeah, they're metal. All
Oh,
the
wow.
elementals, the earth elementals, the water elementals are made of metal.
I thought the water elementals were on the newer side, so they would be
No, they were
okay.
metal, but they're nice sculpts. I mean, they take to paint very well. But if you have 6 of them, it's gonna be at least half a kg or something.
I really like the greater earth elemental. I think that one looks great. I just
Yep.
didn't I don't feel the normal water elementals. They look a little bit too cartoonish for my taste. Yeah, so these are one regiment. So in order to fit the 50 mm length on the 40 mm base, then I have to angle it, and I chop off the back part of the horse so it looks like it's riding out of the water. These are the Abyss Harlequins actually from the Kickstarter, Vanguard Kickstarter. I traded 2 sets of it, so I have 6 models. And the cavalry are the only ones that I don't like to do PMC because I like this 6 horse lance kind of formation. I use them as the Order of the Brotherhood with Banner of the Green Lady because I chopped off this banner and applied it here. I think it looks great. My Beast of Natures are actually Frost Fangs with GW Eagle Wings. Let's see what else do we have. These are Pegasus Knights, Order of the Forsaken. So I added wings to the Mantic Cavalry.
Where do you get those wings from, Paige?
These are actually from Scourges, which is the Dark Eldar from GW. There's this infantry with wings. The sad thing is some of them have angel wings and some of them have bat wings. So the bat wings are behind. I've since switched the back row flank, the black back row to angel wings from I don't know what wings were they from because I just bought the wings. Somebody was selling in them loose, so I bought the wings and attached them. Pretty difficult to attach actually because the contact point is so small. I had to pin. Yeah,
Yes,
these are the Scourge
I
wings
remember
on the
them.
Pegasus.
I remember them breaking quite a few times.
Yeah, they keep breaking off because they're sticking out, right? So when you pick up the model, accidentally brush across the wings, it just keep falling off. Pretty annoying. Yeah, Eagle Wings, Scourge Wings on Mantic horses as Pegasus.
Oh, this is really cool. Your mini bus.
The mini bust. I just bought this secondhand. Somebody was selling it. It was a palette cleanser to paint this. Pretty big. Druid, this is actually a succubi lurker that I converted. I made her hold a wand instead, and the wand is like conjuring water. Because she usually surges the water elementals.
Then you got to show your Order of Redemption Knights. Do you have them?
Yeah, they're far below. The Mantic Earth Elementals are still made of metal, so I didn't want to deal with metal. I bought the Abyssal lower Obsidian Golems instead
Traitor.
for greater Earth Elementals. I used the Cronius as a greater Earth Elemental.
Even more traitorous.
Green stuff the face, which was pretty easy. You know, you just make a cube and then you just make a T. This is the Order of Redemption. The reason why I started the Order of Green Lady Army is purely from this picture alone. I thought this picture was really awesome from the Uncharted Empires book. And finally, I sourced all the parts, you know, mainly Mantic parts to make my Order of the Green Lady. This is Basilian Cavalry. With this is a Abyssal Guard Shield, which I thought had that face on the shield, so I could do it similar. And this is a piece of tree armature from a piece of a tree from Woodland Scenics to make the branch coming out. Like I was trying to decide whether these were branches or antlers. I just decided to go with as a branch. Yeah, I tried to put some dots to represent the embroidery on the cloth. And from the top view, you can see that
amazing.
They have a cape of water. So in the Fluff, the Redemption Knight, they have water. The armor is water enchanted with water magics. So at first I wanted to paint the armor watery, but I decided that would probably not go well with my painting skill, especially. So I was like, okay, how about I make a cape out of water? And how about if they ride together, the cape is in one flowing stream? Yeah, so I have to arrange the horses in 6. Usually you have a 6-1 here behind, right? So I have to squeeze all 6 in the front rank in a arrowhead formation. Yeah, this is my proudest unit so far. Yeah, this is the avatar of the Green Lady. These are just plastic printed wings. I enjoy being creative with my model choices as well. This is an Ice Blade from Northern Alliance. And this is a unicorn from League of Infamy, which I got Heart Piercers. Last army I'd like to showcase. This is my current work in progress. Three Kingdoms. This is a very famous part of Asian literature and history. You know, part of it is history, part of it has been dramatized, but the story is pretty epic.
Yeah, like for those people who are familiar with the computer game Dynasty Warriors, yeah, it's basically set in the same setting.
Yep. So Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, I have them riding. These are Dragon Ball toys that I found online. So if you read Dragon Ball, you recognize the dragon immediately. It's quite iconic. So one on the purple dragon and one it's not glued down, so I could mount him on the original horse he came with. And Zhang Fei on the green dragon. This is Zhuge Liang, which is he's a master strategist, but he's not a fighter. So his iconic is he's very iconic for this feathered fan. So I made a feathered fan and put him on the cloud to represent the Pegasus. And my initial decision for this army didn't include a giant, but as I was browsing online, I found this really cool Monkey King sculpture that I like. Oh no, I must have this model in my army. So he is very badass. So most Kingdoms of Men armies do not have giant, but I'm gonna make a list with a giant and I'll just build my list around it. Hopefully it doesn't do too bad, but I just can't pass up on this. Well, that's my feature. Rule of cool, right? Let me see how to stop that share screen.
Yeah, it's stopped already. Okay, that'll be a very hard act to follow, Nick. And Jesse.
Is it my turn now?
Yeah. I also have Order of the Green Lady. I made a display board. I wanted to feature it in our upcoming campaign finale, but which the campaign keeps getting pushed back due to COVID. And I finished this display board months ago, and I'm still keeping it under wraps. I wanna surprise the whole local scene. This is my most awesome display board to date, and I can't wait to show it off. But I still have to wait until COVID is over, or at least subsided, for our local scene for me to feature it. So keep a lookout for that. Countercharge After Dark, guys. Some of you have seen me working on it. I showed you some of it. Keep a lookout for my second display board wanker submission. Nick, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so I wanted to show off my Abyssal Dwarf army first. This is my latest army, and it's almost fully Mantic. I decided to go with Abyssal Dwarfs because the sculpts are just so awesome. And then, evil dwarfs are a faction, which is not represented, in our local meta yet. And it's always nice to surprise the boys with, something unexpected rather than the usual tropes. So this is, what I assembled, some time back. And this is how they look now, fully painted. I go with a red and gold theme for all the dwarfs. But I go for a darker theme, a more dirtier theme for the slaves and constructs to contrast the two different social classes.
Wow. Sorry, I missed the front part. Are these Mantic dwarfs?
Yes, these are the Mantic Abyssal Dwarfs.
The shields designs are amazing. I haven't seen them up close, but wow.
Really fantastic sculpts.
They're amazing.
And this is the army initially, when I got them, partially from Singapore, so I get remember this. Yeah, the only downside for me would probably be the Abyssal half-breeds, because they were an older sculpt. But I look forward to see what Mantic will come out for them in the future. This is the Overmaster, on Ancient Abyssal half-breed. It is tearing a dwarf in half. You can see the head is here.
Awesome!
And,
zoom in.
And the body
zoom in.
See strands of blood, the gore and stuff
Wow.
the mouth here as well.
What part of the dwarf is that? The head?
This is the head. You can see the helm with the beard.
Oh, okay.
Oh yes.
That's a big dwarf, though.
Yeah, it's a GW dwarf, a spare bit that I had, and the rest of the body down here with the shield. So I used this part here to sort of balance the model because I think it was a bit slightly warped. So a bit of creative usage here.
The head is metal, right? The half
Yes.
That's why it's a bit front heavy.
Yeah, it's
You actually need to pin it, for best results, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, to zoom all the way out, then you can go. Yep.
These are the orcs. I like that. They look really good. I had some difficulties fitting that round circle, into the base. But I think newer Mantic models don't have this feature anymore.
they don't have that.
The initial plan is to paint something like Saruman's, white hand on their shield or some sort as a indicator to which Abyssal Dwarf house they belong to. So maybe something in the future.
Awesome.
It's the greater Obsidian Elemental. I love this model a lot. That face is what drew me to this army. It's chunky, but he does miss out leg day, it seems. You can see behind the lesser Obsidian golems there. Staple in my list. Defense 6 is always nice to have. All right, so this is what they look like pre-painted. You can see some characters here at the front. Slave Master. I took this from the Slave Orc box, which gives you Slave Orcs together with a Slave Driver. You get the Overmaster and the new Power Armor Chaos Dwarf guy. Sorry, can't remember the name at the moment. And this is how they look like now. They're all fully painted. Together with the gargoyles. Yeah, I've gotten from Gut.
Awesome.
I also dabble, in Empire of Dust with my old Tomb Kings. Other than Abyssal Dwarfs, this is actually my primary army. I love playing with them a lot. The EOD style of attrition, grinding, and surprise surges, speaks a lot to my nature of playing tricksy armies that I like. So of course here, you see this guy at the back. This is converted from a McFarlane toy, I think, of a Tibetan god, which I then pull out certain pieces and replace them with Necrosphinx parts.
It looks really cool. Could you zoom in on that? Wow. Or do you have a solo feature picture of it?
I will show you later. After
awesome.
this. Yeah.
Sure.
Again, this is the army that I bought to the tournament that day with guard. And the monolith, this is an actual ornamental piece from Lebanon, I believe, and that I managed to snag from my former CEO.
Wow.
This thing is super heavy, you know, you can actually stab someone to death with the pointy end. Mounted on the base, you know, in a perfect size, actually.
So you're looking around your CEO's office and could I have that? It would make an awesome monolith for my army.
Yeah, I was asking him because, you know, I was having this meeting with him. Then I asking, I looked at the piece, and then he was actually going to store it because he has no use for it, all these brickbats and whatnot. So I asked him, you know, do you mind if I can have that? They say, by all means, just get it off me. Yeah, you can see the models in the foreground here.
The weirdest places we find models.
Yeah, man. Fighting against my friend's dwarf list, actually. He's proxying the Stegadon for the Iron Behemoth. Right out. Yes. And then, of course, my reanimated Behemoth will definitely win, of course. Yeah, part of my EOD collection spread out on my kids' alphabet table. Yeah.
The display board is not fantastic. Yo, you gotta up your display board game.
But it is modular.
True that.
Yeah, so more pictures of my EOD with the old Nagash model acting as a bone giant. And then some of the older Tomb Guard as Revenants. I used to play Revenants a lot in second ed, but now in third edition with their drop to, I don't know, medium infantry with defense 4, I'm not sure, you know, if I would want to fill them. We need to give them a try to see whether they are worth it or not. More models from Reaper miniatures, actually, which I quite like a lot to use as Cursed High Priests. And then the size comparison of different models. You can see a GW Bone Giant, Reaper Mini here, the Avatar of Soapback or something, GW Ushapti, and the Mantic Enslaved Guardian with bow. Another third army I have is Kingdoms of Men. So this was a test game against a potential new player using his Chaos Dwarfs from Forge World. This is against our resident Night Stalker force. I painted all my regiments according to the different states in Malaysia. So each regiment will have a color according to their state flag.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is the state of Perlis, which is the northern and smallest state. It is not so well developed and more agricultural. So I go for a more simple weapon look for this kind of units, spearmen and whatnot. For Penang, you know, since we are more metropolitan, you know, and as a trade hub, you have access to more higher quality troops. So all the pole arms and whatnot will come from Penang.
That's an awesome idea.
Yeah, so this is part of my Kingdoms of Men army, which uses the old Empire list. I included a few other units here, like, you know, these Warriors of Chaos models, which I painted in a white, blue, and gold color scheme to break away from the traditional bad guy colors. And I'll use them as a, you know, regiment of foot guard with heavy weapons. You have an assassin here from Reaper Minis as well. He's been doing good so far in my games, disrupting the enemies. I think quite well worth the points to fool around with. Yeah.
Like meta note, there seems to be a lot of disruptive individuals in recent lists.
Yeah.
Nowadays.
You have this list of spearmen from the state of KOW, which is our breadbasket. Produces all our rice, so to speak. Fighting against, you know, a dwarf king on beast. What is it, God?
I remember that. I remember who has that model. I shall not name names.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the same owner that has this lizard riders here as well. One last army I have is Ogres. It's still a work in progress at the moment. You know,
Number 4.
Yeah, I got this off my friends. So we can see here, you know, a bit of them in action against a dwarf army as well. So pretty fun to play. You know, I'm not an ogre player mainly, so it's just good to roll them out and just play with a brute force army for a change. And finally, we did live streaming before of our games for our friends who are unable to join us. So this is from one of those sessions where we recorded our game, and we get someone with a camera to stream our games, and then all our community members can join in and take a look.
Wow.
Oh, that's awesome, man. We tried to do that via Facebook Live for one of our games recently, but it didn't really work that well.
Ah, I see.
Because you have to be a friend to view the video.
Yeah, the guy's account was private, so like
Now, let me show you this. I'm not sure you can see it. This is the model now
Oh,
awesome.
that I've
very
painted.
nice.
Sorry, that was painted. So
It looks fantastic.
I still need to do some touch up on this stuff because I feel that it's not dusty enough. I need to put in more brown and maybe try to work in more cracks on the body of the model itself.
Awesome. Do upload pictures once you're done.
Will do. Up to you, Jesse.
Awesome. Jesse.
Yeah, those super awesome. Those I haven't seen those Abyssal Dwarf models up close yet either, and I like the base work you did. Paige, your that water effect with the wand, that was super cool. I've never seen that one either. That druid or whatever. Let's see if I could screen share some of my stuff. Okay. So, anything showing up here?
Yes, I'm looking at your Basilea army, the green one.
Yeah, okay. So this is the army that I took to the Singapore tournament. I
Won
had
best painted as well.
yeah, I had a learning experience on the Horde of Knights. I thought Horde of Knights sounded super cool, so I based them all on a huge horde and later had to saw it in half to make 2 regiments. But I made this with an African theme, with kind of an Ethiopian theme. I liked the lions. I added some features with green stuff there, but all Mantic. The stuff that I brought to Singapore was all Mantic. I've actually added a dragon character, but even my bits. So there's my dwarf hammer on a Basilean priest.
Awesome.
My Elohe regiment, and I go for kind of just a simple unified basing technique. Nothing. I'm not. I still kind of struggle with basing, and I haven't really pulled off a good panorama yet. There's what's his name, Gnaeus Solistus. I also enjoy the pose of those Vanguard characters, Paige. Those are some of the coolest models. Here's my freehand banner.
Oh wow.
Paintwork with a lion in there. Kind of looks like a, I don't know, cartoon, but
Yeah, I think it looks great.
yeah. This army is this is my Super Dungeon Explorer Undead army, and I bought this some Kickstarter that somebody gave up on, and made it into this with kids. And actually, I didn't paint any of these, so these are all painted by students as part of an art class, and we did the basing work at school as well. And so we'll kind of zoom into some of these.
And you get to keep all of them. That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of bought it with the intention of basing a class around it, and so there's that. One of the girls really liked the chibi models, and she was really good at painting the eyes.
Free child labor is always good.
Yeah, it was free. It was mostly free child labor, and the kids joke about that. This is one of my favorite models in that set. I don't know why I like that guy's pose. Okay, so this is the one. So this is Morgoth the Faceless, and it's a really good showcase of my green stuff ability, where I simply put a blob of green stuff on top of his face, and so that's that.
The math checks out.
Yeah, there's not a lot of. They're all monopose skeletons, and there's not a lot of them in the box, but we kind of use some of the other pieces for base filler. This is Jarvis. I think he's called the Wandering Minstrel in the the Super Dungeon Explorer. He's one of my favorite characters to play with as well. The wolves. Yeah, and these come from. I mixed in 2 sets of Super Dungeon Explorer. So there's the Forgotten King as well, and some of these models come out of that Forgotten King set. And this was an awesome highlight where a girl put batik shirts on the zombie trolls. And so this is
traditional Balinese shirts.
Yeah, this is a very like local feel to it. And so that was super cool when we saw that she had done that. And she was already done with both of them by the time I even noticed that that's what she was doing, and it was super cool. So anyway, there's some of the armies that I have done recently. I'll try to get the full army picture for that one more time. So yeah, this was all, it's been super fun to introduce this hobby to kids, and they obviously get into it. And when we were able to have in face-to-face learning, we were playing during lunch break and trying to get every free moment that we could in the school day to come down and either do some hobby or do some games.
Awesome.
So there you go. I don't know how to stop sharing my screen either. Okay.
Yeah, but
did that work?
yeah, but Jesse, you do have a lot of projects on hand. You have orcs, you have some elves, you have some wood elves. Jesse's man shed is full of hobby goodness, man. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm stacked pretty deep here, and I guess if I had to choose, I want to redo some elves. That's kind of my next Kings of War project, is to expand my elf collection to include some Sylvan kin. I want to get both, I want to get 2,000 points of both elves and Sylvan kin able to play. So that's my next step.
Awesome. For myself, after my Kingdoms of Men, it would be Salamanders. I have Salamanders, which is my lizard men, right? And I have Abyssals, Forces of the Abyss, Mantic army. So these are my next two projects.
Yep.
All right. So I think we are just about near the end of the show. Anyone have any final words or shout out to make before we end the show?
Well, I will say that Kings of War is picking up in Indonesia as well. I'm part of a WhatsApp group from guys in Jakarta, and every now and then one of those guys will start popping out these Kings of War pictures, and they're collecting an army and getting excited, and so it is growing all the time.
Yeah, that's cool, because I didn't know that you guys had a Kings of War Indonesia, because initially our Kings of War Singapore group, it became a regional group with Malaysians and Indonesians. We found some players in Jakarta, which is the capital of Indonesia as well. So it's just great. The community is growing. Fanatics allows us to be to connect with each other, forums and all these podcasts. You actually feel that you know each and every one of them, even though you probably might never meet them. Yeah, so just a shout out to Jesse
Conwell.
Rest in peace, and we miss you, Ben.
Jesse Conwell is
one
of the pillars of the Kings of War community. It's sad to say goodbye to him so early, but he will not be forgotten.
Yeah, so shout out to Mantic for making the Jesse Ogre Warlock model. It's very popular. I think almost every player here is buying it. So
last thing to add, Page, Penang size is just over 1,000 km square. Misspoke earlier. Sorry. You want to edit that in.
Bigger than Singapore. Bigger than Singapore. Singapore is about 600 km square.
Yeah, because this includes the mainland as well as the island. That's why.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Paige. It's nice to see you guys. Nicholas, nice to get to know you a little more today. And wish you guys all the best. We'll see you later.
Likewise, Jesse.
Great.
Take care.
And
yeah, me too.
That's a podcast, y'all. It's a wrap.
The wrap.
Bye.
Bye.